The 2023 Afcon finals served up a record 119 goals at an average of 2.29 a game. Not since 2012 has that figure been bettered, and CAF said more than 2 billion people watched the tournament live on TV, making it by far the most watched Nations Cup finals in history, with 173 territories across the globe broadcasting the final. Late goals were a particular feature, with Group B alone providing more than after the 89th minute than the entire 2021 tournament did. The 4 shootout saves in the quarterfinals by South Africa's Ronwen showed that the goalkeepers were in blockbuster mode as well. So we'll talk about the successes of Cot'Ivoire 2023, and to have that conversation, I'm now joined by Lux September, who is the head of TV and communications at CAF. Thank you so much for making the time, waking up early and joining us here on the AM Report.
I thought I was on holiday here in South Africa and you guys bring me into it. I'm very excited. I'm always happy to be in this building, because somehow whenever I'm here, I've got this sense of African excellence, and I'm always very proud of the work that you guys are doing here. Even when I'm in, either in Europe or wherever, I kind of keep tabs and watch what's happening in this show.
Well, we're very glad to hear it. Let's talk about your successes then, looking at the Afcon, those numbers, painting a picture of what was a successful tournament. You spoke about it and tweeted about it as well in terms of the numbers and the records that were broken. Take us through that journey.
I think this kind of closes the debate on the value of football. And because we're not just talking numbers. I mean, I've got a friend of mine who loves rugby. He always tells me rugby is more commercially appealing than football. I think the last Afcon kind of really closes that, because you look at the biggest rugby match, which was South Africa playing the final of the Rugby World Cup. You've got to times that by 10 to get the same audience as Bafana playing Nigeria. The last Afcon was the most successful Afcon in the history of Afcon. Everything in life is about leadership. I think the leadership of Dr. Patrice Motsepe at CAF has breathed a new life in CAF, has brought a new strategic direction. And not only has it produced the most exciting Afcon on the field, but has brought the most successful Afcon off the field. In 2021 in Cameroon, we had 7 sponsors. In 2023 Afcon, we've got 17 sponsors. In the last Afcon in Cameroon, we had about 64 broadcasters. In the Afcon in Cot'Ivoire, we had 110 commercial partners in that space. Now, this speaks to the confidence people have about the future of Africa. The future of Africa no longer as bystanders and as observers, but as participants with equal contribution on the table of opportunities.
Yeah, and then we just showed that tweet because you're talking about the highest TV viewership, the highest in terms of broadcast rights holders. And some of these highlights that you speak to about the leadership of Dr. Patrice Motsepe speaks to getting more sponsors, more partners, and the overall strategic direction. Where to from here then?
I think the problem with success is that it actually brings you a lot of pressure, right?
Yeah,
but these are the most exciting times for Africans, because this is the time when Africans are realizing the true value of what they have and what they own, whereby we are no longer just borrowing ideas from other people. We are implementing things, whereby we are no longer being defined by potential, because people always say Africa is rising. We no longer want to rise. We want to actually be on the table and contribute. I think the leadership of Motsepe, what it has done, it has brought a paradigm shift in the way people see football. It's the same story that happened here in South Africa, by the way, the PSL, with what Dr. Khoza did with the PSL, whereby the PSL no longer became a 90-minute game. It became a commercial contributor to the GDP, to the population. And the way football here, I think in South Africa, sometimes you guys are very hard on yourselves. The success of this league, I've been to more than 50 countries in my life, but whenever I come back here and I see what the people in South Africa have built for themselves, people from the townships, people from the villages, I get a sense of pride, because it debunks the stereotypes that the Africans cannot do this job. Somehow they need supervision at all the time from someone else. Look at the leadership of CAF right now. What Dr. Motsepe has done, the average age of the directors. Last week we had a meeting in Cairo, 7 of us. Out of the 7, 4 of us are all below the age of 45. Now, this is the true face of Africa. No longer wanting, I'm not an ageist, I'm not against anyone else who's old, but the young Africans who've worked somewhere else, who've studied somewhere else, are coming back to contribute, to give the commercial value to the assets that are owned by the African people. So we're looking forward to Morocco. I'm going there in the next 2 days. I'm going back to Morocco because we are preparing for for the Afcon 2025 because our president pushes us so hard, man. We don't sleep.
Yeah. And you're talking about that. Do you feel that the influence of Dr. Patrice Motsepe has also changed the way that other people globally are viewing CAF and are viewing African football as well? Because we're starting to see a shift in terms of players even welcoming a competition like Afcon, where previously they would opt to stay away, and there would be a certain view cast upon it by other internationals as well.
I think there are two things here. First of all, I mean, leadership is almost like oxygen when you are climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have oxygen, you might be the most competent climber, but you're going to fail. The second aspect, you must look at what the global trends are. I was watching Sky Sport during Afcon, and just after Afcon, I went to London, and I met the people who are running Sky, and they were telling us this was the most exciting Afcon.
Yeah.
This, at times, it was surpassing the EPL numbers. I mean, here in South Africa, by the way, in South Africa in the last 4 years, the biggest match, not only in locally, whatever, the biggest match ever is the Afcon match between South Africa and Nigeria. It's bigger than the Rugby World Cup. It's bigger than any other EPL match or anything else. It shows that Africans are interested in themselves, about their stories, and they are able to commercialize this. So I think these are the exciting times. But more importantly, I think the contribution of what Dr. Motsepe has been, I mean, a lot of people when he came to CAF told us that he's going to be there for 5% of his time. I wish this was true because I'll have more time on my hands. But this is not necessarily true because he's so hands-on, he is so focused, and he has pushed us as a leadership because before the Afcon, he said this has to be the best Afcon ever. And he asked each director at CAF, what does the best look like for you? This was 2 years ago. So what has happened, I mean, I read in The Guardian in the UK that they said the Africans and the magic of Afcon. I got a little bit offended because somehow it's almost like this is by fluke, it's by magic. No, it's intention, it's hard work, and it's being deliberate on what you want to do. And the results are there for everyone else to see. Record TV audiences, record commercial revenues, record number of goals, and of course the entertainment at the stadium was amazing as well.
Let's not rest on your laurels. Then 2025, you've alluded to it. There are meetings happening in Morocco. Do we have a date?
Can I get a holiday? Look. I think there are practical realities that have been challenges that have been presented to us, because remember we work within the FIFA calendar. And we were planning to have the Afcon in July, if you remember. But FIFA has introduced something called the FIFA Club World Cup, an extended version of it, which will have about 32 clubs. Now, this has meant that we cannot stage it around that time. There are negotiations right now between Dr. Motsepe with Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, and of course the Moroccan Federation with President Fouzi Legja, to find a common ground. And I'm sure there's going to be a date in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, well, we'll hold you to that. But let's move in terms of what you would like to see improving overall with the state of African football. Afcon, a big tick. Women's football is another focus area that Dr. Motsepe has spoken about and perhaps wishes to have that broadening. What are the plans in the pipeline? I'm
actually excited about the project of women's football because we are taking a product that everyone else said has got absolutely no value. At the last Afcon that we had in Morocco, we were literally experimenting with so many things because we wanted, I mean, in the past, people, because it's women's football, they'll put 5 cameras. In the last Afcon, we did the final with 20 cameras of the women's Afcon. Now, we saw that there is a big market there. And I think what we need to do, because everyone else, I mean, I sometimes hear people, giving slogans, let's put more money and all those other things. The reality, and the sad reality, is that a lot of the people who speak about let's do all these things, and they're in influential positions. They're not able to give, for example, people like yourselves, if you get a guy like Adrian who's got a show there, does he speak on a regular basis about women's football and the commercial value of it? Now, the rhetoric that we have must transfer and transform into something else more tangible. I think this is an exciting thing because now we've got the Afcon coming up, the women's Afcon coming up, and I think at CAF we've got an interesting plan for this, not only to make sure that women's football becomes accessible, because one of the things that Dr. Motsepe Taski gave me was that every African must watch the Afcon. And that's what we are going to do with women's Afcon. And I think we are going to see some record audiences there because for the first time, we will sign up a lot of these TV stations. We will make sure that, but we need the commercial partners to come involved in women's football, not as a CSI, not as a favor, but because we believe there is a commercial value in the product.
And I think you walk the talk as well, because we saw the likes of an Amanda Dlamini becoming the first woman commentator at that Afcon competition. But let's move things a bit closer to home now. And we did see a statement issued by CAF around the raid at the SAFA offices by the Hawks, showing a bit of concern in the statement. As we read it there, CAF is concerned about the respect and image of football in South Africa following the raid by the Hawks, Serious Commercial Crimes Investigative Unit on the SAFA headquarters. Unpack what the nature of the concern is, because at this stage it's obviously about optics, because you're not looking at the merits of the case itself. But what are the concerns from the CAF side?
Well, I mean, look, when the new president of CAF came, he came with a 10-point plan. Inside this 10-point plan was good governance, integrity, and this is the things that he has championed throughout, not only in South Africa, but in every country whereby there's something similar like this. He asked these difficult questions to the member association. I think it's common cause that CAF has written to SAFA asking a number of questions, which I don't think is correct for me to talk about them here. Yeah. But at the gist of it is that we want to understand from the South Africans what is happening, give us an understanding of what happened, what transpired, because it's in our interest that football, at all times, the image of football must be safeguarded. Yeah. The integrity, the governance, the proper governance structures must be. If you ran on a ticket of good governance, you must walk it, even when it's your people who are on the other side of it.
Yeah, and I think the overall thing is CAF has asked, for SAFA to produce evidence that there was no wrongdoing. While we can't go into the merits or, what exactly is contained there, is there a deadline that you have set them to provide this information to CAF so that you can take this forward? Correct,
100%. I mean, again, as I said, there is a private communication between CAF and its member, SAFA. They are aware exactly what CAF has asked for, a very detailed document on what is the state of football, what is the state of what happened, and so on and so forth. And I think also it's important that there's a presumption of innocence at all times that we are operating from as CAF. But also at the same time, we want people to look at African football differently right now. We want to ensure that this momentum, we're able to ride on it, this wave, we are able to ride the wave as much as we can to ensure that football is not on Newzroom Afrika only about corruption, whatever it is, this thing that is always the single story that has defined Africa forever, but a different story, the story of success.
We're certainly hoping to be having more stories of success as we go along, but we'll end it here for now. Thank you so much for your time, Lux.
No, thank you very much. As I said, I always feel inspired by coming here to a TV station owned by Africans and driving what I would believe is an African agenda.
Well, of course, that is Mr. Lux September, who is the head of a TV and commercial, or communication rather, at CAF.